Altseason isn't coming. It's actually already happened, but most won't realize it until it's nearly over. So, in this video, I'm breaking down the data behind the surge, and I'll reveal whether this momentum is sustainable or whether we should start managing risk before it's too late. Altcoins as a whole have been booming, and when we look at the 200-day moving average heat map, we can see that since our last update, the market has absolutely ripped through this line in very quick succession. While we're still sitting in the yellow colors on the heat map, we've yet to see those deeper orange shades that typically signify the real overextensions of a bull cycle. That doesn't mean we won't get there. We might just be consolidating before another big push higher. But one thing's for certain, we've been following this oscillator-style pattern above and below the 200-day moving average in a reasonably predictable way. If you've been trading in and out of altcoins, this has probably been one of the easiest stretches of the cycle to capitalize on. Now, let's quantify this recent rally using one of my favorite classical analysis tools, the altcoin risk curve. This indicator maps short-term altcoin market momentum using a simple but powerful concept. How much has the total altcoin market cap changed over the past 30 days? We can use these raw returns to assess whether the market is in a phase of risk-on acceleration or just outright capitulation. As we know, altcoins are highly cyclical and emotionally driven. They can go from deeply oversold to irrationally euphoric in a matter of weeks. And this tool is one of the best for understanding where we are in that shorter-term cycle. The chart shows we're currently in a phase of risk-on acceleration, and when the curve dips sharply into the red, it often signals a washout or risk-off compression that tends to form around local bottoms. When it flips green, it indicates the market is likely entering overheated territory and the trend is beginning to exhaust. We're now firmly in this boxed area of the risk curve, which historically signals that monthly returns have far outpaced their norms, making a correction increasingly more likely. So, while prices could still go higher, now is definitely not the time to start aping into new altcoin positions, even if that fear of missing out is firmly kicking in. As always, if you're buying into weakness and selling into strength, you're probably going to do well in this volatile altcoin landscape. If we take a look at the Altcoin Vertex, which I covered in a previous video, we see a similar story unfolding. This indicator is built to track capital flow extremes across the entire altcoin market, using a volatility-adjusted deviation model. It tells us whether the market is behaving within normal ranges or pushing into overheated or undervalued zones. When the vertex pushes up into the upper red area, it means capital is flooding into altcoins at an unsustainable pace. This is typically where greed and froth tend to peak. Right now, we're just starting to scrape over my upper red threshold. So, while there's potentially still room for this rally to continue, it's definitely time to start shifting toward a more risk-off mindset. I'll be adding a few of these macro-level altcoin metrics into my indicator suite over the weekend, so keep an eye out for those. Let's now talk about one of my favorite new tools, the Altseason Diffusion. This indicator is all about measuring the breadth of altcoin outperformance relative to Bitcoin. Essentially, how many altcoins are actually beating Bitcoin over a defined period. Sounds simple, right? But this is where it gets interesting. Most traders define Altseason by anecdote. Maybe their favorite token just pumped 50%, so therefore it must be Altseason. But without market-wide breadth, that logic falls apart. One or two coins pumping doesn't mean capital is rotating across the board. The diffusion indicator solves this by tracking a curated basket of 35 top altcoins and measuring how many are outperforming Bitcoin over a rolling window. If the index pushes above 0.7, which is shown in green, it suggests Altseason is in full force on a local scale, just like what we saw during the post-election rally last year. If it drops below 0.3, as shown in red, it indicates Bitcoin is still dominant, even if a few altcoins are popping off here and there. That's exactly what played out during the March 2024 rally. The total altcoin market was rallying, but the diffusion reading stayed relatively low, confirming it was driven by a handful of major coins, and that less than half of these altcoins were actually outperforming Bitcoin. Fast forward to today's rally, and we've shot up into some of the highest levels on this score. That confirms this has been a broad-based altcoin-wide rally. If you've been holding your favorite tokens, they've probably ridden along for the journey. Now, this indicator doesn't predict corrections, but what it does do is confirm what we suspected a few weeks ago, that we were overdue for another speculative FOMO-driven phase. And that's exactly what we got. Finally, when people go searching to find out whether we're in an alt season or not, they often refer to Blockchain Center's Altcoin Season Index. My version of that is something I call the Altseason Prism. It uses a similar underlying calculation logic, but zooms out to give a more macro-level view of things. I'm not interested in the local, temporary mini-alt seasons. I want to track the big one that caps off the cycle. This tool measures the performance gap between Bitcoin and the altcoin market over a 90-day window, helping us understand when capital is truly rotating into alts or flowing back into Bitcoin. Unlike the previous indicators, which can be checked on a daily or weekly basis, the Prism excels at contextualizing the broader trend over time. Short-term surges may look impressive, but if they don't break above key thresholds, they won't trigger a true rotation signal. If the final leg of this cycle plays out like the last one, this is the indicator I'll be watching most closely to guide my positioning in the altcoin market. We can clearly see the 2021 alt season peak here, when maximum retail euphoria flooded into the market. But a few months before that, this same chart signaled that an altcoin rally was brewing. When the indicator turns red, it means Bitcoin is rallying hard while altcoins are lagging behind. This often precedes a major altcoin rotation, as capital eventually rotates out of newly acquired Bitcoin gains into the more speculative end of the market. This is the time when people look to squeeze out every last drop of returns that the market has to offer, or, in some cases, completely blow up their portfolio. Looking at the current cycle, we've seen a few local mini-alt seasons, but we've yet to see a full-blown market cycle peak rally like we've witnessed in the past. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen again. It might not. But if it does, and your instincts tell you something big is coming, this is the indicator you'll want to check to confirm it, and avoid getting swept up in the euphoria like everyone else. So, to wrap things up, there's a lot to unpack in this rapidly moving market, and when it all starts to kick off, we can all feel a sense of panic as we scramble where to look. The altcoin market has clearly heated up, and the altcoin risk curve is showing signs of elevated risk. Monthly returns have pushed into historically overextended territory, which doesn't mean prices have to drop right now, but it does mean that the odds of a correction are increasing the higher we go. That's something to keep in mind if you're thinking about chasing pumps at this stage. At the same time, the Altseason Diffusion is confirming that this isn't just a few random coins rallying. We're seeing real breadth across the market. Dozens of major altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin, which is a classic sign of local alt-season strength. That gives a bit more weight to this rally, but it also suggests that it might be FOMO-driven. And finally, zooming out, the Altseason Prism is still showing that on a macro level, we haven't yet seen that full-scale capital rotation from Bitcoin into altcoins that typically marks the top of the cycle. So while we're getting some local fireworks, the bigger picture rotation signal hasn't triggered, at least not yet. That could still change. But if you're looking to stay ahead of the curve and avoid getting trapped in euphoric blow-off tops, these are the signals I'd be watching closely. It's hard to keep your cool out there when everything's pumping in unison, but staying grounded in data is your key to avoid becoming that famous exit liquidity. If you're serious about Bitcoin analysis, my full custom indicator suite is now live, built for investors looking to gain an edge through deep cycle signals and advanced on-chain insights. It's available now through the link in the description, where you'll also find my free newsletter. And if you found this valuable, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And I'll see you all in the next one.